Hello everyone who's watching. I thought I'd just do a quick little video on the subject of fertility, and it's a completely random one. You may not be interested in the slightest. If you don't want kids, then that's cool. Just stop watching here, spare your time and carry on scrolling or doing whatever you're doing. But if you are interested in having kids, and say for example, like myself, you've just turned 30 and you might be looking to just push it back a couple of years, maybe into your 35, late 30s, whatever, there's actually something that I would highly recommend doing at this point. I worked in the midwife-led department in a hospital for around 4 years, and I was quite lucky because I was right next door to an IVF nurse who was really, really helpful. And she said, okay, well, you're turning 30, you're telling me you might not necessarily want kids soon. I would recommend that you do this very simple blood test, and it will tell you what your egg reserves are. So this test is called an AMH test, and you can buy it online. You can actually do it yourself. It'll come in the post. You don't need to go and see a doctor or a nurse. You can just order it. It'll come to your house. It's just like one of those finger prick tests. You squeeze your blood into a tube, you send it off, and then they'll tell you what your results are. And it's on a scale. So, I guess it's fair to say that after you turn 30, apparently the numbers are your fertility decreases by 3% every single year. I know from being a midwife that a lot of women, when they reach their sort of mid-30s, they might struggle a little bit. It might just mean that they need to try for a little bit longer, or it might well mean that they need to go down the IVF route or ICSI, something like that. But ultimately, I guess in my experience, I would just say if you can avoid IVF, it's probably better to avoid it if you can. Obviously, it comes at a cost. One, there is criteria where you can get it on the NHS, but obviously you need to tick all of those boxes. I can put a little bit more information down below. I have got the details that I can put in there if that's helpful. But yeah, just for the sake of doing a simple blood test, what it will do is it will basically tell you what your levels are. And, say for example, if it came back that your fertility levels were sort of slightly less than par, then, you've got a decision to make. If you're with a partner, you might consider trying for kids a little bit earlier if that's possible for yourself. Or there's other options. You've got egg freezing or you've got embryo freezing as well. So with egg freezing, I believe, and I have got the stats here, the success rate of having a baby, a successful birth from egg freezing is around 18%. So it's actually quite low. By the time the eggs have thawed and you've gone around an IVF cycle or a couple of IVF cycles, it's 18%. Okay, so that's sort of the stats there. Then you've got your embryo freezing. So apparently this is just embryos surviving the thawing process. 95% survive the thawing process. So a lot of people will say that actually embryo freezing is better than egg freezing. You've got a bigger chance of having a live birth from embryo freezing than egg freezing. That being said, not everyone in their 30s or whatever age, you could call it your mid-20s really, not everyone will have a partner at this point. So obviously if you're in that situation, then you might consider doing the egg freezing instead. Even if you do have a partner, by the way, if you do embryo freezing and for example, you store the embryos and in 2 or 3 years time you've broken up, then the partner actually, obviously quite rightly, needs to give their consent for you to use those embryos. So the only problem with embryo freezing is if you're not certain you're going to be with your partner, it could be a total waste of money because you might be storing those embryos and not being able to use them anyway. However, if you haven't found a partner, you don't think you are going to find a partner, you could go down donor sperm. Just add another thing to the list of information I'm giving you here. But you could do donor sperm, and you can freeze your eggs, you can turn those into embryos, and then they're pretty much good forever because once you've got the donor sperm, it's yours in essence, really. So, there are a lot of ethical concerns that around all of these topics. Obviously, the law has changed now, so any child born by any either egg or sperm donor can actually find their biological parents later on in life. When they reach adulthood, they can track them down. Absolutely fine as well, but it's just something that you may wish to consider. So, in a nutshell, I would say best thing to do if you're looking to start a family at some point, you're looking to push it back, whether it be a couple of years, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, best thing you could do, get yourself an AMH test. It'll test your fertility levels. Then you can discuss it. You can discuss it with either yourself if you're single, or you can discuss it with your partner if you're in a relationship. But at least then you've got the knowledge, you know? I just have seen so many women struggling, and it has an impact on their relationship if they have to go through IVF or fertility issues. It's just not something you really want to do. And especially if you aren't eligible in the NHS for IVF, then it obviously comes at a cost, which again is just something that you just don't really want to have to deal with. So I really hope this chat has been helpful. It's called AMH test. I can't recommend a site, unfortunately, but just type it into Google, loads will come up, you can just pick. But it's around £70 to £80 as a benchmark figure. If you have got any more questions, you can DM me. I'm very happy to try and answer them if I can, but hopefully a lot more information as well, along with some stats, will be down below. Thank you for listening. Hope it was helpful.